They were the gods of the Sunset Strip and the kings of MTV, redefining the electric guitar with lightning speed and neoclassical flair. But when the 90s arrived, the spotlight didn't just dim, it blew out. Today, we're counting down 10 legendary 80s virtuosos who ruled the airwaves, then completely vanished from the mainstream map. Number 10, John Norum, Europe. You know the riff. Everyone knows the triumphant brassy synth line to The Final Countdown. But behind that massive wall of 80s production was John Norum, a Swedish powerhouse who brought real blues-inflected weight to Europe's sound. Norum was a disciple of the old-school European guitar masters, especially Gary Moore and Ritchie Blackmore. His tone was thick and saturated, far more serious than the hair metal tag Europe often got stuck with. While many of his peers chased speed, Norum focused on phrasing. His solos breathed. They felt intentional. By late 1986, as Europe's image grew more polished and non-stop TV appearances took over, Norum had had enough. At the absolute peak of the band's global breakthrough, he walked away, playing his final show on October 31st, 1986. He didn't want to be a teen idol, he wanted to be a guitar player. He later released Total Control and joined Don Dokken's solo project, but the American mainstream had already moved on. By the 90s, Norum had retreated to Europe, a missing figure to U.S. audiences who once saw him everywhere MTV ruled. Number 9. Steve Lynch, Autograph. If you lived through 1984, you heard Turn Up the Radio. It was the ultimate feel-good anthem, and its solo showcased the era's signature move, two-handed tapping. But Steve Lynch wasn't just another flashy player chasing Eddie Van Halen's shadow. He was one of the earliest mainstream guitarists to popularize what became known as the 8-finger tapping technique. Lynch used his entire right hand, all 4 fingers, in ways that pushed the guitar into unfamiliar territory. The result felt closer to a keyboard than a blues lick. He literally wrote the book on the style, publishing The Right Touch just as Autograph were breaking into the mainstream. Autograph's success was tightly tied to the mid-80s party rock moment. After Loud and Clear failed to match their debut's impact, the band struggled to regain momentum. By 1989, despite recording demos for a 4th album, the deal fell through and the band fractured. Lynch didn't chase trends or attach himself to a supergroup. He stepped away, choosing teaching in technical clinics. For a guitarist once everywhere on MTV, Steve Lynch quietly vanished from the mainstream spotlight. Number 8. Adrian Vandenberg, Whitesnake. Adrian Vandenberg was already a star with his namesake band and the melodic hits Burning Heart. He had a refined elegance that made him a natural bridge between the blues-rooted guitar heroes of the 70s and the technical precision that defined the 80s. When David Coverdale reshaped Whitesnake after the success of their 1987 self-titled album, Vandenberg emerged as one of the band's most visible new faces. The album had already been recorded with John Sykes on guitar, but Vandenberg was brought in to play the now iconic solo on the radio version of Here I Go Again. From there, he became central to the image that dominated MTV. Behind the scenes, his musical role only grew. Vandenberg co-wrote most of Slip of the Tongue alongside Coverdale, but a severe wrist injury prevented him from recording the guitar parts, leaving that task to Steve Vai. After Whitesnake wound down in the early 90s, Vandenberg stepped away from the industry and returned to fine art painting. When he resurfaced with Vandenberg's Moon Kings in 2014, it felt less like a comeback than a quiet reappearance. Number 7. John Sykes, Whitesnake, Blue Murder. John Sykes was one of the most influential guitarists casual fans rarely knew by name. He was the key guitar architect behind Whitesnake's 1987 self-titled White Album, a record that went 8 times platinum in the U.S. and helped define the massive high-gain guitar sound of the late 80s. His Les Paul tone was a wall of sound, built on tight palm muting, screaming pinch harmonics, and a vibrato so wide it felt industrial. Despite that contribution, Sykes was dismissed by David Coverdale before the 1987 tour ever began, cut loose just as the album he helped shape exploded on MTV. He answered by forming Blue Murder, a powerhouse trio aimed squarely at musicians rather than trends. But timing worked against him. When Blue Murder's second album arrived in 1993, the industry's focus had shifted hard toward grunge. A notorious perfectionist, Sykes withdrew from the spotlight, becoming a classic player's player. Revered by guitarists, but largely absent from the charts. For decades, Sykes remained one of rock's most elusive figures. When he passed away in late 2024, after a private battle with cancer, it seemed to close the book. But today, with the posthumous release of My Guitar, his voice re-enters the conversation, a reminder that the sound he built never really disappeared. We're just getting started. Coming up, we'll look at the man who replaced Randy Rhoads and a mystery man who hasn't been seen in public for 30 years. Number 6. Steve Stevens, Billy Idol. Steve Stevens was one of the key sonic architects behind Billy Idol's massive success, a guitarist who helped define both the sound and look of 80s pop rock. His signature ray gun effects, created with toy ray guns fed through Lexicon-style digital delay, were instantly recognizable. Combined with his flamenco-infused rock style and eccentric stage presence, Stevens wasn't just a sideman, he was part of the spectacle. His crossover impact was cemented with a Grammy for the Top Gun anthem. By the end of the 1980s, Stevens and Idol had parted ways, and his career took a more fragmented turn. He formed the short-lived Jerusalem Slim and later brought his guitar firepower to Vince Neil's solo debut, Exposed. But as the musical climate shifted, Stevens' adventurous blend of punk, disco, metal, and flamenco no longer fit the mainstream mold. He never lost his edge. Instead, Stevens evolved into a revered session player and niche solo artist, releasing the flamenco fusion standout Flamenco A Go-Go in the late 90s. While he eventually returned to Idol's band in later years, his story isn't about disappearing, it's about choosing exploration over the spotlight. Number 5. George Lynch, Dokken. Mr. Scary himself, George Lynch was one of the only guitarists who could go toe-to-toe with Eddie Van Halen on sheer attitude and innovation. His Tiger and Kamikaze guitars were instant icons, and his solos on Alone Again and In My Dreams set the bar for a melodic shred. Lynch's playing was tense and aggressive, built on odd scale choices and a nervous vibrato that always sounded like it might snap. When Dokken finally imploded at the end of the 80s after years of friction between Lynch and singer Don Dokken, George formed Lynch Mob. The debut hit hard, but the ground was already shifting. As the early 90s arrived and the industry turned away from flashy guitar heroes, his brand of intricate, heavy blues was suddenly treated like excess. George never stopped playing, he recorded constantly, jumped between projects, and eventually focused on custom builds through Mr. Scary Guitars. But the scale changed. He went from headlining arenas to playing intimate clubs. The mass media spotlight that once tracked his every move simply turned off. Number 4. Warren DeMartini, Rat. Warren DeMartini, often called Torch, was maybe the most tasteful shredder of the 80s. He had a vibrato that sounded like a violin, and an instinct for hooks that helped Rat sell millions of records. He wasn't just fast, he was precise, blending a 50s rock and roll feel with 80s technical flash in a way that never sounded forced. When Rat's classic lineup fell apart in the early 90s, Warren didn't chase the next trend. He briefly worked with David Coverdale in the mid-90s, then stepped out on his own, releasing Surf's Up in 1995, and the solo album Crazy Enough to Sing to You in 1996. It wasn't a grab for relevance, it was a personal left turn. But DeMartini had no interest in the grunge makeover or a public reinvention. Aside from scattered Rat reunions, often tangled in legal battles over the band's name, he mostly pulled back. The releases slowed, the appearances got rarer. For a guitarist who once lived on magazine covers, his long stretches of silence turned him into a ghost of the Sunset Strip. The top 3 are the big vanishers. One walked away from a multi-million-dollar career, and one simply disappeared. Number 3, Jake E. Lee, Ozzy Osbourne, Badlands. Jake E. Lee had the hardest job in rock, replacing the late Randy Rhoads in Ozzy Osbourne's band. He didn't just get through it, he thrived. His work on Bark at the Moon and The Ultimate Sin locked Ozzy's solo career in place and produced riffs that are still doing the heavy lifting decades later. Jake played with his thumb over the neck, leaned on wide bends, and avoided whammy bar theatrics. His sound came from grip and control, not tricks. Then it ended. Abruptly, Jake was fired by the Osbourne camp with little warning, and he walked away to form Badlands, a gritty, blues-based band that sounded nothing like the Sunset Strip. They released 2 strong albums before internal tension, label issues, and changing tastes pulled the project apart. The later loss of singer Ray Gillen closed the door for good. After that, Jake didn't chase relevance, he didn't explain himself, he pulled back. For years, he stayed away from the industry, rarely recording and almost never seen. When Red Dragon Cartel surfaced in 2013, it wasn't a comeback. It was proof he had been gone by choice. Number 2, Vinnie Vincent, Kiss, and Vinnie Vincent Invasion. Vinnie Vincent is the man who arguably saved Kiss during their unmasked transition. He brought a frenetic, chaotic energy the band desperately needed, and on Lick It Up, he co-wrote 8 of the album's 10 songs. That record didn't just keep Kiss going, it reset them for the MTV era. When he launched the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, he took shredding to its absolute illogical extreme. Faster, louder, flashier than almost anyone else. He was a polarizing figure, a brilliant songwriter paired with a technical madman. Then he vanished. For years, Vinnie became an urban legend. Lawsuits, scrapped recordings, total withdrawal. Aside from a few brief controversial appearances decades later at fan expos, he stayed almost completely out of sight. He went from the biggest stages in the world to long stretches of near-total silence, leaving behind one of the great what-could-have-been stories of the 80s guitar boom. Number 1, Vito Bratta, White Lion. Vito Bratta is the ultimate what-if story. In the late 80s, he was hailed as the successor to Eddie Van Halen. His solos on Wait, When the Children Cry, and Little Fighter were intricate, melodic masterpieces, full of tapping, classical influence, and control that felt unusually complete for the era. Guitar magazines couldn't stop talking about him. He wasn't just fast, he sounded like the next step. White Lion's classic era ended quietly in 1991, and when it did, Vito Bratta didn't come back in any meaningful way. Unlike others who chased indie labels, session work, or reinvention, Vito stepped away from the music industry almost entirely. He took on the responsibility of caring for his seriously ill father, and later dealt with a wrist injury that made electric guitar painful to play. He chose to stay close to home in Staten Island and live a private life. Aside from a few rare appearances in the mid-2000s, he hasn't released new music or returned to regular performing. For a man whose talent once had the entire guitar world watching, his disappearance wasn't gradual. It was total. Vito Bratta is the Greta Garbo of the electric guitar. A man who gave the world perfection, then asked to be left alone. The 80s gave us a lifetime of legendary riffs, but as these players show, fame is a fragile thing. Which of these players' exits still feels unfinished to you?